And now we're going to switch pace a little and go hybrid. So our next speaker is going to be virtual. I'm assuming we have Mark on. Yep, we do. Perfect. So it is our great privilege, thank you, Mark, to welcome Mark Sowden, Chief Executive and Government Statistician for Tatauranga, Aotearoa. I hope I've got that pronunciation right, which is Statistics New Zealand. Mark is a career public servant, is particularly proud of having had the ability throughout his career to help people make a difference in their lives, leading the country's primary data and statistics agency and the government's principal advisor on statistical matters. He is passionate about how data can be used and allow us to make better, informed decisions. In his role, Mark is responsible for how and when Stats New Zealand produces statistics and the authorising of publishing data and statistics. He is the government chief data steward, supporting the government to realise the potential of data to improving well-being while maintaining and building trust in its use. Mark, welcome. It's been an exciting day here, and we're really looking forward to your address. Thank you. Over to you, Mark.
Kia ora koutou. Kia ora koutou and good afternoon. Can I just check that you can hear me over there?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, excellent. So look, thank you very much for the introduction, and I'd like to acknowledge all of the Australian government data professionals in the room there in Canberra today, and indeed online. It's a real privilege for me to be here and as one of the keynote speakers at this conference. And look, I'm conscious from what I gather from the introduction before the last speaker, I'm getting between you and drinks and dinner. So I'll try and keep it brief, but I want to kind of go high level about the benefits of data and what we here at Tatauranga, Aotearoa or Stats New Zealand are doing around to help the government realise the overall power of data. So, look, I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today. I am trying to minimise my carbon miles, though, and also, as you may hear from my voice, I'm ironically ended up recovering from COVID. So, instead, I'm talking to you here from my home here in Wellington. So, look, to cut to the chase, everybody in this room and on this call has the potential to save lives or improve lives. Some of you will support the introduction of targeted interventions into the public health system, while others of you will can give young people the best possible start in life through the education system. The potential for you to make a difference for Australian families, for children, for businesses, and for communities you live in is huge. And why? Because you have the data and sound policy that delivers targeted public services and interventions relies on quality data. Put it simply, better data makes our lives better in so many ways. And I want to talk to you today about how we're helping the New Zealand government do that, so that hopefully you can pick up some things that you might be able to apply in your own space. A better data, I would start from the point, excuse me, I'd start from the point that better data is the responsibility of all of us in the room today, because we all play a role in the data system. And I was privileged to speak to you last year when I spoke about the need for individual agencies who collect data to have good governance in place and have individual data policies and upskill their workforce. So today I'll be looking at what we need to do as a system to be good stewards for the data and to give the public confidence that we're doing that. So raising it up out of the individual agency level and talking about us as a system. And I'll take a focus, as I say, on what we here in Aotearoa, New Zealand are doing and give you some examples. So we have a thing called the government data strategy. So data stewardship is guided by this government data strategy and roadmap. And if I can have my next slide, yes, no, we've got that. Excellent. Look, the strategy provides a shared direction and plan for the government data system of New Zealand and for the New Zealand government, not for New Zealand as a country, just to be clear. It was developed with the input of a wide range of agencies, so it is a shared direction, and it was developed in collaboration with our partner agencies so that it is agreed and understood. The system strategy has focus areas which each have outcomes and initiatives associated with them. And the focus areas are the ones you can see up on the screen. So I won't read them out, you can read them for yourselves, but basically what I'm going to do for the rest of this presentation is step through what we're doing under each of those focus areas. And as you'll see, those focus areas are difficult, right? They're the areas that agencies can't solve on their own. If this was easy, you would all be doing it. My colleagues here in New Zealand would all be doing it. This isn't simple and straightforward. This is the stuff that actually really benefits from working across a system. And so, as I say, and it's a theme I'm going to keep coming back to, everyone in this room can play a role in helping New Zealand or Australian government or the Australian Bureau of Statistics solve complex and systematic challenges like the ones you see up on the screen. So just to go through these focus areas in more detail on what we're doing, if I can have the next slide, please. The first one of these is around trust and confidence. And I don't need to tell you that there's been a significant change in society's trust in government and society's willingness to share their data with government globally. We're all seeing that. However, more timely statistics and data allow us to respond swiftly to new developments, and more granular data means that we can be more targeted in our policy advice and better account for disparities across gender, regions, industry, firm size, or demographics. So we've got these two challenges where we need more and better data, and we need it from, in our case, New Zealanders, in your case, Australians, and yet there's a real disconnect in terms of the trust of those individuals to give us their data. So what do we do? So what we do here is we don't just hold ourselves to a high degree of high standard of quality as Statistics New Zealand, just the same as the Australian Bureau of Statistics does. But we work with the New Zealand Public Service more generally to promote and champion good practices in statistics and data. Because actually a system is only ever as strong as its weakest link. So we need a well-functioning national statistical system and a national data system to produce data for better lives. So we need to make sure we do this. And so I thought I'd take you through a little bit about what we do. It's underpinned, this government data strategy, is underpinned by an absolute commitment, firstly, to maintaining and enhancing public trust and confidence. And at a tactical level, we deliver that in New Zealand through a few things. And they are the things that are listed on the right-hand side of the slide there. So we have an algorithm charter for Aotearoa that we developed in consultation with the system. And this is the public service agencies in New Zealand have signed up to this charter, and it demonstrates a commitment to ensuring New Zealanders can have confidence in how government agencies use algorithms. So it goes to things like transparency about how algorithms are used. It goes to transparency about how the algorithms are created in the first place in the test populations. And it goes to how demonstrating how regularly agencies test those algorithms for bias. So it's one of the many ways that government demonstrates transparency and accountability in the use of data. And you will know yourselves from cases like RoboDeck just how important the use of algorithms are, but also how badly they can go wrong if things go wrong, and how important maintaining that trust and confidence in those algorithms are. So that's our tool for that. We also have a data ethics advisory group, which works across government and helps government agencies explore new and emerging uses of data while adhering to ethical data practices. So this is about giving New Zealanders, in our case, confidence that where government is trying something new and different, it has actually been through the right ethical safeguards. We also have a thing called the Ngā Tikanga Paihiri framework, which guides safe, responsible and cultural appropriate use of data. So this is about trying to introduce an Indigenous data sovereignty lens and Indigenous ethic lens into how we use data as a government. And then finally, we have a thing that I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on, which is the Interim Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation, which we launched last year. And that's about providing leadership in the safe and ethical use of data and data-driven technologies, including artificial intelligence. And that centre aims to help government agencies tackle data ethics issues efficiently and proactively and facilitate the trustworthy use of data. It's part of the role that we play. And it basically is a fairly small scale exercise at the moment, but we're intending to enlarge it over time. It's based on the UK Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation. And it is effectively a network centralised hub to support the integration and coordination of relevant work programs and relevant research programs. So we're working a lot with academics in New Zealand around that as well. So we're trying to leverage what is a relatively small data ethics community into something useful. And it's about providing visibility, advice, guidance, and promoting public awareness and engagement on the use of AI and data and innovation. So our hope is that the Centre will enable our country to build on the legacy of ingenuity by being at the forefront of safe and ethical data-driven innovation. And most importantly, will give New Zealanders confidence that we are doing that, and that those ethical considerations are being thought through and being worked through by people who know what they're doing. So this is almost our social license for the ability to innovate and do some of the cool things that we would all like to do with data around data sharing and the use of AI and so forth. So look, that's trust and confidence. That's the first pillar of our strategy. And if I can have the next slide, please. The next key plank in our approach is advising the government on data investment. So we play a role in advising the government on data investment across the system. So bringing together data from different sources and wrangling manual processes with variable capability isn't easy. And we have underinvested in New Zealand. You may have seen some of the things in the media around our health ministry and some of the issues they had with data around ED, emergency department waiting times. It's just one of the cases where that legacy of underinvestment in data and reporting systems is really coming back to bite us. And that's no criticism of the individual agencies. It's what they've been incentivized to do. It's the decisions that governments make. It is the fact that legacy systems creep up on us. As you will all know, as legacy systems creep up on us if we're not at all careful. So that does lead to errors, and it does erode public confidence in the ability of government agencies to handle data, to understand service level outcomes, what's working, and what might work to address any gaps that there are. So here at Stats as the government data system leader, we're working at a system level with the Treasury and other system leads on long-term investment in data and defining those priorities for that investment. And we actually have a role in our government budget process to advise on any bid that has data implications, and to advise government at the start about what those priorities should be for a given budget round when it comes to data. But look, at the end of the day, like we all do, or like most of us in the room probably do, we work within a political system, and we have an election every 3 years. So we work with the government of the day who wants to see tangible results. But we think that the ability to actually advise on data investment is one of the key planks to lift our game as a country and as a government, to ensure that we're realising the value of data. And we produced a long-term insights briefing last year, which estimates that the value of data-driven innovation to the New Zealand economy in 2021 was $5 billion per annum, which from your perspective will be quite a small number, but from our perspective is a medium-sized number. However, the key thing is by 2030, the estimate of that value is up to $36 billion per annum. So that level of growth is something that you'll no doubt be familiar with. But in order to realise that, we have to invest. We have to do the social licence piece that we talked about to get permission to do the cool things, but we actually have to invest in the technology to be able to do the cool things too. So what we're trying to do in this space is bring together the advice on what that investment should be, so that across government we're making investment in the most important things. I'll be honest, that's a work in progress. So we'll keep working on that one, but we are managing to make some, to have some impact in that, and direct investment into some of that core that we all know as data professionals is really important, but doesn't necessarily give ministers new and shiny things that they can launch. So that's a work in progress, but a useful plank nevertheless. I'll turn now to the third plank, if I can have the next slide, please. And that next slide is around, the next plank is around data sharing and access, and facilitating data sharing and access. And I'm not going to go through the things that we do in this space, because they are quite technical, and they're exactly the same things that you'll be looking at around standards and interoperability and so forth. But I thought I might give you a case study to illustrate some of the things around data sharing and what we're doing at a system level. So we have a thing called the integrated data infrastructure. We have two things: the integrated data infrastructure, which integrates data that the government holds about individuals, and then the longitudinal business database, which does the same thing for businesses. And those two are linked. So you can see how people flow in and out of given businesses and in and out of given industries and so forth. So you can look at both the individual outcomes and those individuals' connectivity to firms and the economy. And they are, I think, pretty much a national treasure. In my humble opinion, we run them, so I would say that. but actually they are key, as I'll demonstrate. So these are large linked data sets comprised of information from across multiple agencies, and the linking spine is created by linking births, tax records, and migration data to create a linked population. And it contains data sources for the individuals, for the IDI, contains data sources from our health system, our social welfare and social services system, our education and training system, people who receive government subsidised housing, people's income, tax levels, etc., interactions with the justice system, and all of the population data, migration inflows and outflows, when I leave the country, when I come back to the country, that sort of thing. Now, those are all anonymised, so stripped of information that can identify individuals and then are used for research purposes. There are strict protocols around that, as you would imagine, which I can go into if you're that keen. But yeah, they're available. What those protocols are available on our website. And the longitudinal business database pretty much does the same for businesses. So that contains information around location, industry, business type, institutional sector, and the parent subsidiary relationships of businesses. And as I say, contains a whole lot of data also from our agricultural sector and the performance of our agricultural sector, international trade, business practices, financial data that we collect from businesses, and also linked to employee tax information. So you can see how individuals flow in and out of businesses. You can see how businesses grow. You can see how businesses shrink over time. And all of this I just really use it as an example of the power of being able to link data and share data across the system, and what the benefit is of having having these sort of facilities for government policy. So we had a new government elected just before Christmas, as you may well be aware. They campaign very much on a policy called social investment, and at its heart, that is about agencies knowing the need of the population, the social services agencies understanding the need of the population they serve, and the effectiveness of the interventions that they try and serve them with. Not a radical thing, but actually it is a radical thing, as we all know. And so that's going to require a real step up in the use of this linked data and life course data to understand, for example, what education programs delivered to preschool children might do in terms of the overall outcomes of those children as they grow and become adults and interact with the economy and interact with the health system and maybe the justice system and so on. So it's going to be a key plank that we're building for the future, and we're really proud of that. So I thought I would just, rather than talk all about all the things we're doing about integrating data, just give you an example of a really concrete thing where we have integrated data. The next plank that I was going to talk about, and if I could have the next slide, please, is around skills and capability building. And look, you know as well as I do that capability in the data space is absolutely scarce. And as a government, we end up, we're in New Zealand, we're 30-odd government agencies, we end up competing with each other, ramping up the price for data professionals. So we're looking at investing in data capability for the system across 3 distinct phases in people's working life. So one is early in your career as a graduate, then development as you become a fully fledged data analyst and you start to think about how to grow your career. How can we help people have a career in data in government? So they don't leave government, they actually move around different agencies and develop their career in that space. And then the leadership piece around data and trying to create data literate leaders. So I'm not going to talk too much about the work that we've done in the space because the ABS has done a lot in that space and you'll be familiar with it. And what we do and what the ABS does is pretty similar. But there is one bit that I just thought I would call out, which is we do run a graduate program called the Analytics and Research in Government program. Which is a multi-agency grad program where we bring in talented grads into government and then we actually do help them manage a career path for the next 2 or 3 years, moving around different government agencies to fill out their experiences and fill out their skill sets. And we get absolutely brilliant feedback from the young people that go on this program, and it does enable us to get a good pipeline of people. It also allows us to try and get a pipeline of diverse people coming through that, because we can use the right criteria to try and get, as we all are trying to do, more diversity in our workplace across the data field. The last one of our focus areas, and again, the next slide, please, if I can, is around Māori data or Indigenous data to put it in your context. And this is a difficult space. I will make no bones about that. It is a difficult space, and we are making progress in that by partnering with Māori themselves. There is an iwi leaders group. So iwi is the Māori name for tribal groups. There is an iwi leaders group which represents about 75 of the major iwi in New Zealand, the major Māori tribal groups within New Zealand, who are mandated to work with us. And we work with them on system level settings. And that ranges from how do we make sure that there is data available for Māori specific needs, if there are pieces of data that are of particular interest to Māori to understand their people and their population, through to building the data capability of Māori and these iwi, these tribal groups themselves, to be able to use their own data and almost stand on their own 2 feet from a data perspective and analyse their own data. And then at that real high system level, we are looking at how can you introduce an Indigenous data sovereignty lens into that, and how can you get equitable outcomes for Māori in the data system. So our Māori population is overrepresented in all of the negative statistics that you can imagine around social and economic deprivation, and they are also very low. They feature very lowly, if you like, in our response rates. So we don't know as much as we need to about a very high needs group of the population. So how can we work with Māori themselves, and particularly the iwi leaders, to be able to get better data about Māori, help them understand themselves, and help them be able to work with that data? And look, I'll be honest, we're several years away from that at this point. That's our nirvana, but this does represent the starting foundations of that goal. If I can have my next slide, please, and I'm just conscious of time. This basically goes to our data stewardship role. So this is the how we do it. So I've talked about what we do through that strategy. How do we give effect to that? And I wear a hat, as was announced at the start of the presentation. In addition to my line role as government statistician and chief executive of Stats New Zealand, I wear a hat called the Government Chief Data Steward, and that is a mandated role by our Public Service Commissioner, our head of the public service, to actually work across government. So that's what's given me the ability to be able to do that the data strategy that we've talked about. It's what's given me the ability and some of the resources to be able to make the progress that I have. What it doesn't give me, however, is the ability to direct my colleagues. So, just the same as a number of the system lead roles that you'll all play, it does involve using relationships and involves using so-called soft power to work together with other agencies to help get the settings right. Excuse me, help get those system settings right, so that we can use data to drive new insights into the needs of the population and inform sound policy and evaluate the effectiveness of government policies. So we do have to take an opportunistic approach to that. I'm quite shameless about that. And the things that you've seen before you in terms of those elements of the government data strategy are the things that my colleagues have told me are the pain points for them. And so I've taken, as I say, a pretty opportunistic approach of trying to go forward by working on those pain points and answering those pain points. And, have we covered everything? I would say no, we probably haven't, but we have actually made a decent amount of progress through that suasion, through that working together on common shared problems, and a use of a bit of soft power. The funding lever is a lever. So, we all know funding is important. That funding lever is a lever. And so those combination of things, I guess, has allowed us to make a bit of progress. But I want to be clear, whilst I stand here and I talk about what I think is some good progress, we've still got a long way to go in terms of getting a genuinely joined up approach across the New Zealand data system. And you'll hear me using words a lot when I talk about our work across the system around influencing, motivating, facilitating, and enabling, because I don't have that mandate. So that makes it hard work, but it actually makes it really interesting as well. Which I guess leads me in closing to just a very brief comment on the stewardship role that we all play. And I think the onus is on all of us to work both within and beyond the places that we all work to make sure the government data system is sustainable well into the future and answers the questions that our government and our populations are asking of us. And as I said at the start of my speech, data has the potential to make lives better, and that's what's really important to me, and I'm sure it's what's really important to you. And it's up to all of us to work together across the multiple agencies that we work with to help unlock the incredible power that quality data possesses to create equal outcomes and access, to enhance productivity and value for money, and to support broader social and economic development. Ngā mihi kia koutou, thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Mark, and I appreciate it's much later for you in New Zealand. We have time for at least one question. If there's a burning question from anyone for Mark, please put up your hand. No. Is there anyone? There's one I can see. Thank you.
I don't know.
Yeah, got it?
Wow. Thank you for your time, and you spoke a lot about, influence and other things, and that you don't have a mandate. If there were particular mandates that you could have, what would they be, and where is that kind of policy lever best placed in the data space?
Look, it's a very good question. Excuse me. I think it's in the data standards. If I go to what gets in the way of, say, building that IDI bigger, it is actually in the data standards. So so how do we make sure that data collected in other agencies is of the right quality? And probably the second lever that I would want, if I could, would be the ability to direct other agencies to collect data on our behalf. So just like you, just like the Australian data system, we have agencies that collect data all of the time. Our Inland Revenue collects huge amounts of data, and they do share it with us. But they collect the data that they need, not the data that I need. And I have no ability to talk to my colleague or to direct my colleague. I can try and, again, persuade him. But I have no ability to direct my colleague, who's the Commissioner of Inland Revenue, to collect data that we would need. And yet it may actually be better for New Zealanders to do that because they give the data only once and they already have a relationship with IRD. And it may be better for us or better for the system overall because it's actually the cheapest and most effective place to collect that quality data. So I think they're probably, I'll give you two, they're probably the two, the ability to direct and collecting data and data quality standards.
Thank you, Mark. It's really good to have heard you today, and it actually is a great segue to our next fireside chat. So thank you, and hopefully your recovery goes well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day.